Call this meeting to order. The February 13th legislative meeting at 5:30 p.m. And you guys bow with me, I'm going to pray. Dear Jesus, we just thank you, Father, for just your mercies that are new every morning and your faithfulness, which is great. Lord, I thank you for your grace and your mercy. Lord, I thank you for this great county we live in. I thank you for all of the public servants that have stepped up to the plate to run for office and who are willing to step into this arena to get bloodied and bruised and battled, tested, and are willing to defend the citizens, and who are willing to stand up and be a voice for the voiceless, champions of the oppressed, Lord. And we just thank you for the ability to provide good governance, give us wisdom, give us discernment on the choices we make to do what's in the best interest of those we're called to represent. And we just love you, Jesus, and we thank you for this time that we can gather publicly and openly and for a meeting time. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda? Before we move to approve the agenda, actually, I'm going to remove item E without any objection. Process for approving commission meeting minutes. Commissioner Boyd had asked me to put that on there, but she spoke with the county clerk about it and asked me to remove this at this time. So without objection, 9E, we're going to remove and strike all. That being said, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Schoaf. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of minutes, January 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Schoaf. Got a second? Second by Commissioner Klein. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Recognition of the public. We have one person signed up to speak. Mr. Padgett, you can stay right there if you'd like to, or come up. So you have 5 minutes. If you will mind just your name and address for the record.
I'll do it. Wayne Padgett, 279 Bursby Branch Road. This process started in 2017 with a FEMA concerning the properties over there on the creek, helping the county pay for them. I thought it had culminated in August of 22 when we had a special call meeting of the budget committee here, and they approved the money to move the old post office like it was agreed on by the commissioners to the community center grounds. And it cost us $63,000. Since then, that has changed. We have an old house that has no significance whatsoever beside it that some people have wanted to move up there also at a cost of about $500,000. Modern Day Wrecking is a company that was hard to, is that right, John? Modern Day Wrecking?
Yes, I think they're one of the winning bids.
Mainly, all of y'all, I've talked to most of you one-on-one about this, but mainly I want the people out there in the audience at home or watching this tonight to realize that if this project is deviated from what it's going to cost the taxpayers in Sumner County. That old building, I don't even know if it'll stay together when you move. I recommend, as a taxpayer, that we go with the original plan that TEMA has approved to pay 75% of it. Is that right?
If you can just remember, it's not an open discussion forum.
Okay.
Public comment.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to verify my facts.
Just feel free to.
Anyway, according to archives that I've got laying over in the chair, 75% of it was supposed to be covered by TEMA or FEMA, whichever way you want to call them. 12.5% by the state, 12.5% by the county. That's the cheapest way, if that's the right word. I hate to use the word cheapest, but it's a way to save the taxpayer the most money is followed with the original plan. The only significance we need out there to remember cotton down by is that old post office, which everybody, I think, has gone along with. But most of the people in the community don't want that old house, the expense put out there to tear it down or move it and rehab. I hope, like like I said, I've talked to most of y'all one-on-one, but I hope the taxpayers out there watching this tonight will realize if y'all change this procedure, what it's gonna cost in dollars that don't need to be spent. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. I've been with this thing ever since it started in 2017, and I followed it every step of the way. And I thought we had a plan that would work for everybody. The two pieces of property, the Battle House and the property where the community center set, was supposed to be combined as an area for all the people of Sumner County to use at the cheapest possible. The only thing we asked for was a pavilion. And that's all in the archives there. If anybody wants to get with me or get a copy of it, I'll be glad to show it to you. Now, that special budget committee, I want to rehash this one more time. The special budget committee met in August of '22 and appropriate the money to do just what I told y'all about here tonight. Now, I hope you will consider that what I said as representatives of the taxpayers that elected y'all to your offices. And that's it.
Thank you, Scott. Public comments?
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Board of Chairman, have none. Board of County Mayor, your report.
No report, I reserve the right to speak on the FEMA hazard mitigation program, if that's okay.
That'd be fine. All right, old business, item A, FEMA hazard mitigation grant properties located at 2265 Tennessee 25 and 2268, Cottontown, Tennessee 37048. I move for discussion. Second, by Commissioner Klein. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, let's discuss. Commissioner Klein had reached out to me stating that he started looking into the numbers regarding these properties. He sent me an email today asking that we print this out, so you should have a copy of those 2 pages of kind of Excel spreadsheet of what Commissioner Klein had gone over as far as what the real numbers are concerning this. There's been a lot of bad information presented by commissioners, citizens, even bad information presented here tonight that's not factual and incorrect. And so what we're going to, Commissioner Klein has thankfully done is spoken with our finance director as well as our grant writer and confirmed all these numbers to be, I guess, accurate and true. So I'm just going to ask Mr. Klein if he can go over what he is prepared to kind of tell us what exactly has happened with these properties, what is happening, and what is not happening with these properties, and kind of what our options are moving forward. So without further ado, Mr. Klein, would you mind sharing?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was frustrated from the very beginning, as probably all of you were, that the numbers never quite added up. So I set out on trying to find out what the numbers were. I started with David Long, and then I talked to Tim Norfleet, and I started building the spreadsheets that you see before you. And so scenario 1, we go with the original plan of demolishing the house at 2268, moving the post office to 2320 with a permanent foundation. So some of the requirements at that time were an archaeology report, which FEMA did not reimburse us any, but it was a $1,500 expense. Property appraisals, they did reimburse us, so that we only paid 12.5%. Hazardous material testing, we had to do that as well, and they did reimburse us. Property acquisitions, we paid $226,376.04 plus the property acquisition closing costs. And so those two combined were the totals that we spent. And if we went through with the plan, we would be reimbursed $201,058, which would be a cost us of $28,722. The building demolition that was stopped about 3/4 of the way through has cost us about 49.
And that house is next to the post office, and that was not complete?
That was not,
Okay.
and in gray, under property number 3, you can see we spent $19,800 demolishing the school, the old school. Now, in the process of trying to figure out where we were at with this whole thing, prices went up. And from the original allowance that we worked out with FEMA, they were willing to pay in reimbursements, if you look down at the compilations down at the bottom, the maximum they would pay at the time was $205,450. In order for us to only pay the 12.5%, we would have had to ask for an increase of $48,000 in change. It was too late to do that before the first of the year. Ms. Norfleet agreed because she said that FEMA had told her it would take too long because of the deadline, the pending deadline in June. So, the total property expenses to date are $364,915. FEMA is willing to pay $205,450, which our costs would be $159,465. If we move the post office and build a foundation, it will be more. So the grand total costs to Sumner County, if we go with the original plan, is $179,307. The maximum, and you can see my note in bold, the maximum reimbursement FEMA will pay under the initial plan is $205 and change. There's not time to process a request for increase caused by increased property values and demolition costs. Those increases have caused a reimbursement shortfall of $48,05,994 if we proceed with scenario 1. Scenario 2 will be within budget, so there will be no shortfall. So if you go to page number 2, we've got all the... Sure, go ahead.
Good.
Is that $48,000 included in the grand total of $179,000?
Yes.
So that is inclusive of that?
Right.
It's not, okay.
Right.
So the total cost of,
I see.
the county losses,
It's
if
right.
we do option 1, the county loses $179,000.
No, I'm tracking that, I was wondering.
So the county was never going to fully reimburse this money.
No, I'm totally.
It was a bad deal.
Totally tracking that. I just wanted to make sure I got the, and I see here on the thing, the scope change, right here, that's the $48,000, the same one you're calling out is on, 56 line up in the top. Got it, tracking.
Okay, so scenario 2, if we stop where we're at, leave the post office and house where they are, the costs will be similar, but, reduced greatly, where we will still have the potential of the same reimbursement. So the costs, at the end of the day, to the county would be $165,796. So the decision for us is to whether go forward, move the post office, and demolish the existing house adjacent to the post office, or leave things the way they are, and, we've got a lot of options. There's the group, Cottontown Community, I forget the names, who talked about renovating all of that stuff at their own cost. I'm not here to debate whether they will or won't, but the long and short of it is, if we go with scenario 2, we'll save $13,500. But Mr. Mansfield is right. There was never, ever going to be a situation where the county wasn't going to spend a lot of money in this program. Right.
So, looking at your numbers, and sent this to me today because it's printed off. The short story that I'm seeing is that the county was, regardless if we had done this in September, actually, let's talk about that special call budget that was mentioned. I wasn't here for that because it was the night that we were dealing with the District 13 election tie. We were dealing with having to appoint a new judge, and dealing with a major controversial rezoning that this kind of got slipped through. And at the commission in August, they voted for, they voted for $164,619.36, and only $100,000 was for flood control, and the other $64,619 was some carryover of fiscal year 2022, 2023, funds, carryover in the budget. And that was the only thing that was voted on. And it wasn't for this full amount, it wasn't discussed, it wasn't in the agenda package, nobody knew what was going on. I didn't know, because it's not written, it was a one-page appropriation. And so, yeah, I got it here, thank you. And so looking at this further, it said, unfortunately, we've heard incorrect rhetoric saying we're going to lose $300,000, we're going to lose whatever. But the problem is, this is a $364,000 project that we were always going to lose $131,000 on, no matter what happens, period. But now, we're at a situation where we're either going to lose $179,000 on it, option one, or we're going to lose $165,000 on it, option two. And it's just, the way I see it is, it was a bad deal and a bad idea for the county to do this to begin with, in my opinion. Had I had more accurate information, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. What's the best way to clean up this mess? So at this point, but it's a frustrating process for me to find all of this information, so thank you, Mr. Klein, for putting the real numbers out here for us to look at, and try to figure out of what's the least painful solution for the taxpayers on losing money on this deal. And so I'm looking for discussion or any motions, or, there's just a lot of things.
So just one question. If we go with option two, the house is still there.
Correct.
So I'm understanding that the house is in bad shape. So Ross, somebody's got to deal with it.
To say it's in bad shape, I was a builder for a lot of years. I've renovated much worse than that house is.
Can you do it for $14,000?
It depends on how much work I do for free. But we could demolish it if that's what, and we can do that for $6,000 and leave the post office. See, with that post office, the move is going to be $63,690, and a permanent foundation, although we don't have an exact number, is going to be upwards of $10,000. And we don't know what kind of utilities we need there.
What is the benefit of moving the post office? What was the original benefit of moving? I know
It was to get it out of the flood. It flooded in 2010, 2016, 2017.
So the post office did flood.
And that was the whole reason for the property owners coming to the county and asking for participation in this flood mitigation.
Well, I did understand that the house, that's
Right.
the case.
Yeah, it was both properties.
It was both of them.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the floodplain maps, half of the property that the old schoolhouse is in the floodplain. So we're talking about inches, which, when floods come, by moving the post office onto that property would have made it safe, is not necessarily true, because it depends on how much it rains, how much the creek backs up. It's really kind of arbitrary. I know that USGS uses numbers and, actual information that they have, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like saying, well, an earthquake of 7.9 magnitude won't knock that building rolls. So, in my opinion, I don't think moving the post office from where it is to the new location is worth $74,000. I don't see it. Especially since it's a wood structure, it gets wet, it dries out, and it goes back down. It's not, even the old house that's right next to it, even though it's been flooded several times, The only damage that house has seen is the drywall that was put in, because it's got all beadboard inside walls and wood outside siding. So, you know, and when's the next time that's gonna flood? Well, I know that it flooded 3 times in 5 years or something. I don't know how many times it flooded prior to that. Those buildings have been there for 100 years.
Chairman, did you have a?
He may have answered my question. I've heard a lot of talk about the post office now. Until recently, I lived in a house that was 225 years old for about 40 years. That's old to me, and I was going to ask, how old is this post office that we want to do this much work for?
I don't know the exact date it was built, but I believe it was the turn of the 20th century, right around there.
So, it's been flooded, it went 100 years without being flooded. At least not so much to cause a problem, you know, in the last 5 years. Do we know what caused the flooding?
Well, we're not cleaning out the creeks. They used to do that. That's a problem. So one solution is clean out the creek and clean up the shoreline of the banks, and, you know, and I think that could be a solution. Tree canopies with asphalt and concrete. I mean, it floods tributaries. I mean, in where I live in Walhalla Pike and Hollow, I mean, what did not flood prior to 2010 floods. I mean, and that's just a fact, and floods out neighbors. I mean, and so, I mean, all part of it is development that didn't exist before. I mean, that's part of the problem that's exacerbating. But two, we're not cleaning out the creeks, so I don't know how we would address that right there near that spot, in my opinion, as would be a solution. I mean, I know Hendersonville's done that, to clean out creeks for residents in parts of the communities where flooding was happening, and they just cleaned the creek out and solved the flooding problem. So, I mean, that would definitely be a solution. Seems like a common sense approach to me.
Mr. Client, sorry, I know I'm kind of breaking the rules here, but if it, you know, and I haven't said this nearly as much, you know, is the difference between the two locations substantial, or are you saying it's basically not?
It's not substantial.
In terms of flooding?
Yeah, I haven't talked to a surveyor to see what the elevation is above sea level, but I would tell you that they're both the property. The schoolhouse actually was not in the floodplain according to the USGS maps. The post office and the house are, but just barely.
Okay.
So
Is it the physical structure or just the land?
it's a physical structure.
And they don't have a scope of a 100-year floodplain or 200-year plain?
What I was told by Mr. Sutton is that when FEMA is developing these maps, they do it kind of in their own time, and they really haven't gotten down to brass tacks on the north side of 25. They've done all the way up to the south, up to 25, but they haven't done past it. So, and he has no idea when they're going to. That's from Mr. Sutton, so.
Kind of like anything else in the county, it don't go up the ridge, it all stays below it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think Mr. Sutton's pretty sharp. So.
I guess I don't have an opinion on the way we're not going to comment on this, but I got all the questions answered the best I can.
yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's a tough choice when you look at the real numbers, knowing that we're always going to lose $131,000 at a minimum had this, you know, happened back in September. Citizens not stopped, you know, when the old schoolhouse got torn down. Because my understanding, there was an offer back in August to purchase that, and it wasn't relayed to us, the budget committee, or at least to move that structure, to preserve it. And so I know the community's been before us. It's not on the agenda, but I know that definitely there's a desire there to rebuild the community center back on that property by the community. So I don't know if moving the post office and putting it in a spot where a community actually wants to put something is necessarily the best idea as far as like a meeting house. If you're just looking at dollars and cents, I mean, option two, by not moving the post office and not, I'm not gonna say not demoing that one house, you can still demo that one house and come up under budget as a best case scenario. I was just shocked about the total cost of this really being about $364,000 project, knowing that we weren't gonna get more than, I guess it would have been about $253 in total. Back in September or October, had this been completed at that time. Yeah, I mean, so the discussion is I guess, on the table is a combination of Mr. Klein has presented one, of you demo the house, you move the post office, and close out these projects, and we lose $179,000, or you just close out the project and leave the post office where it is and the house where it is, and you only lose $165,000, or do you want to add to that the demolition cost of the $6,000? You know, you just bump that up to $171, so you're only, you're still saving $8,000, I guess, so that'd be kind of a hybrid
And
option.
Mr. Chairman, I did this so that we could play with numbers and scenarios, because I have my own opinion, and if I were to voice that, I would want to leave it the way it is. Because if we have to go back and demolish that one house at $6,000, I don't think we gain anything by moving the post office, and we spend a whole bunch doing it. So, that stuff has been there for 100 years now. Yes, the water's probably been rising from development, because hardscape doesn't. We can either push this down for another 30 days so that everybody on the committee can look at the numbers. I can send them the actual Excel file that they want to play with, you know, adding numbers in, taking them out. Or we can make a decision now, or...
I'd like to find out what dates or what years did this thing flood? It says flooded 3 times?
Yeah, it flooded in 2010, 2016, and 2017. That's what qualified them for the FEMA program.
Well, 2010, I know was substantial, but what about 20, how far up, any idea?
I wasn't there to measure it, no.
I'm just gonna look, you're talking about flooding.
Mr. Chairman, I know that Mayor Ridlow had asked to speak on this topic in general. I know we want to get his comments, general
I think that'd probably be good, since I do have the ultimate decision in this process, and trying to weigh these options and work with everybody. You know, my concern is, with scenario 2, is there's some costs that I don't think are included that we will have to look at, whether they're deferred costs, whether we take our chances on something, not flooding again, but nevertheless, they are costs. So, with scenario 2, I have some questions. What is the plan with the post office and the house to ensure future flooding is mitigated? Are we going to elevate the post office, elevate the house? Are we going to tear down the house, move the post office? If we all agree on scenario 2, does that mean we're going to close out the property across the street and get that process started so they can come out and inspect it, and make sure that we can get paid on that and stay in compliance? We're out of compliance on both of them, but at least try to get back into compliance on one of them. And then we need to factor in the legal fees to remove the deed restrictions on 2268 property, because there are restrictions in place that hinder the future use of that property. And in projecting the floodway, there will be problems if we go to renovate, because I know there's been talk of renovating the house. I think we will have issues trying to renovate the house. So that goes back to, are we going to move it, we're going to try to elevate it above the floodway? We need to factor those costs, we need to have some type of plan. I would like to see that plan, I would like to know what we're going to do with that property, because I think if we just do nothing, it's going to end up like the old house that was across the street. And however many years down the road we look at it, we'll have a cost then. And just like we had on this house. So I think those are issues that need to be addressed. We need to know what it's going to cost to do those. That way we really get a true, accurate number.
Commissioner Clark?
As far as the deed restrictions, when I spoke to Ms. Norfleet, she said, since we would have taken out that 2268 from the program, the deed restrictions would no longer apply. She revert back. They would revert back to...
So no legal fees?
No legal fees.
Okay.
I think that's not what she told me.
Okay, that's what she told me.
We'll need to...
I guess I do have one question on one item, if I should ask it directly.
Sure.
The item on the flooding. That's one of two conflicting things. The other conflicting thing is that Mr. Klein stated that there's no appreciable difference between relevant to flooding between the two. And the whole premise of needing to move the post office is that it's flooded in the last several years, which nobody's denied that.
Right.
But if there's no appreciable difference between it, and I'm not saying, I don't know the fact of the ground truth of that, but if there really is no appreciable difference between the two, then we'll just do that and then have to do it again.
Well, there is a little difference if you go to the higher ground on the other property where the community center was. It is higher and not prone to flood. Now, if you go down the slope, yes, where the house and the post office are. I humbly disagree with that premise. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I'm willing to work with you on it. If y'all want to punt flood mitigation down the road, I mean, we've got hard evidence that it flooded 2010, 2016, 2017. Factors aren't changing. TDEC is very restrictive on cleaning the waterways as part of the stormwater management program. You have to have a permit to do that. So there's a cost involved in doing that. We just, you know, we can't put together a posse of volunteers and go out and clean the waterways. So, I mean, those are just, all I'm saying is that those are factors that we need to be concerned with, we need to talk about, and we need to find answers to. The deadline on the project is June of '23. And then, between now and then, we have to have the properties inspected. Now, obviously, if we pull it out of the program, none of that matters. But if we want to close out that one, I can close it out tomorrow, and then we continue discussion on the other one.
I'll make a motion.
And we're fine with that.
Sorry.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor's right. Those two properties are separable. We can collect on the southern side of the bank, and we can raise the buildings above the floodplain and get them out. And I just wanted to add that the building that is in the floodplain is the bridal house. It is in the floodplain.
Yeah, oh, I can't argue that point at all. By some miracle, it's never flooded.
Right, yeah.
Water's come up to it, but it's never flooded. So, yeah, I can't argue that point at all.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion, just so we can try to, just so we can move the ball forward here. I would make a motion that we modify option 2 to include adding the $60,000 and go ahead and demolish the house. I'm gonna make that motion, maybe it's Earl, maybe it's Dale, but I'll make that motion, we'll move forward on one.
I'll go ahead and second it for discussion.
So just to be clear, we leave the post office where it is, we demolish the house. That's the motion.
Commissioner Rogers, did you have anything to say for questions?
Not on the motion, it's on the floor.
I'm opposed to that, and I'll just tell you why. That building can be locked up, sealed tight, and not hurt anybody. I'll go buy the doorknobs out of my own pocket, put them on, and the reason I'm opposed to it is because I don't know what the plan for Cottontown is. And I don't know who's going to be heading it up. And, well, I've heard that the schoolhouse was a wreck, and then I've heard people have meetings in January of 2022. So, I've personally walked that house. It's solid. I don't feel any dry rot or sponginess in anything except maybe the back porch, which was added much, much later, can be taken off without changing the historic value of the house. I know Mr. Padgett says that it's of no value, but I think everything has value. For instance, if the community decided they wanted to embellish that property and they wanted to have a museum-type building, they've got one. If they demolish that one and build a new one, it's probably going to cost them $200,000. I don't like being premature in destroying things that cannot be put back. So,
I'll add to that. Again, the only reason we're here is because the old schoolhouse, Cottontown Community Center, got torn down. And citizens were upset about it, and they did not know that was happening. They didn't want to see that happening. There's only a fringe of group that knew that, to be very honest here. So the selected few understood and knew the plan. But again, process is, it starts back in 2019, I'm sorry to keep beating a dead horse here. But it starts with that sewer line, it starts with the greenway. We have something on the greenway tonight, there's no guarantee that our private act will pass. There's no guaranteed protections in the future, that a future commission, in 3 or 4 years, if a new commission comes in here, they can undo anything we do. It's not financially tied to something. It's that simple, with 13 votes. So, my long-term goal is to honor the desire of the community to preserve that historically, and to David, there's been expressed desires in the community to spend their own money to fix up that at a nominal cost. I've walked around all those buildings and looked at them, very solid, and, can definitely that risk themselves. I just question, why the county got in this to begin with. I mean, but I understand the mitigation grants, but I mean, the taxpayers are eating a pretty heavy cost for this already. But I mean, I can understand what Commissioner Klein's talking about as far as like not doing anything with the 6,000 right now, I guess.
That's fine, I'll modify mine. I mean, I just want to do something, if there is a clock ticking on it, I would like to.
No,
I think we should make a decision.
I want to make a decision.
I don't think any new information to.
No, I'm
realize, so let's just, I'll make a motion then to go with option 2, that's fine.
I second that motion.
And withdraw out the later, what is that?
You withdraw your original motion?
I'll withdraw my original, let's put that on there, here's the rationale. We can come back next month if we want and demolish the other house.
Correct.
So I'll make a motion for option 2.
Second. Any other discussion, Commissioner Rogers?
What does this do legal? I mean, is this all, obviously, some part of it is in the chain and tied up through FEMA and...
Well, there's only one property right now, that's the one that's already been done, and that's just easy, it's like that, we're all in agreement, let's finish that out as part of the process, we have no problem with that, for the county manager, that's a good question.
Well, what this is, it really doesn't need to be a motion and a vote. What this is a friendly agreement that I'm going to close out one side and we're going to start discussing the other side. Just keep it clean.
So,
Because, I can move forward with the whole thing if I want to. I want to work with you on this.
We're going down
And
that.
so what I want to do is I want to close out that one, and then let's talk about the next one.
Well, is that, I mean, what you were asking, is that true? Is that the case? Does it need, is this a commission control thing, or is it a county mayor control thing?
I'm of the understanding that this has to be voted on, so
It had already been voted on.
why was it
So,
not a question on the agenda then?
my question is, it was voted on in August with the 164,000, correct? And then in September, in budget, is when we approved on that, or I guess I asked the question is about budget transfer sheet at the end of the budget document, correct? For that, when I asked the question, what is this about, kind of thing, so not understanding the full scope and picture.
Yeah, and that was separate than the FEMA projects.
For the demolition of the old schoolhouse and Cotton Community Center property.
Yeah.
Correct. So, yeah, and that's a great question. I don't know the answer. I mean, as far as like, all I know is, citizens contacted the mayor about stopping that, and the mayor did, so thank you, Mayor, for doing that. And when they got involved in September. So, but I definitely agree with closing
Combined items?
Well, it started as an agenda item when I stopped the work order.
But these two specific properties have always been combined.
on agendas for legislation.
Yeah, for discussion purposes, yes.
If you wanted to just do it as clean as possible, just bifurcate these and say you're doing this with this and this with that.
That was gonna be my
And that's fine.
amendment is as far as the old general store property, unless you wanted.
I'll rescind my motion.
Do you agree? I was gonna make a motion basically to let it, property number one under sheet one is the old general store property, which is what's already been done and everything with. I move that we go ahead and proceed with closing that out. That'd be a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. None opposed? All right, so that is, we separated that, severed it. Property number two is the historic post office, and I think the Draper House is what it's called, the old house, as far as what is the desire. I understand if, and again, going back to, not beating the dead horse here, I have no problem with allowing a outside nonprofit take these on and manage these properties. Because I have a goal in there is to basically, I don't want to see these properties developed and used as a wedge to create greenways and for eminent domain. There's nothing that we're doing with the resolution, the private act, and even future commissions that could, right now, could stop that. So we're going to see how that's going to net out in May when the General Assembly gets done. But right now, it's coming down to, that's the move. If the community can mitigate what you think it can, I think it can, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to
Let's
say.
have that discussion. But I think we're moving in the right direction.
So, do we want to now, I guess, hold for right now on this one property, and then we can come back next month? Is that agreeable or amenable? Is everyone, is there any questions on that as far as like the old post office property? Whether we move ahead with optional land, or if we wanted to demolish it and move it, or just go ahead and demolish that building and keep the post office there? Like, is that,
I'm still not clear as whether it's the mayor, I mean, I'm kind of confused, and maybe that's the whole thing, it's not easy to do. If the mayor can do whatever he wants to, why are we even taking the vote?
I think it's up for debate whether that is, but we have agreement on one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've moved that one, but I guess my second question is, though, once it moves, if it gets a yes vote, does it go full commission for the full commission to decide? Or does the mayor just stop it all tomorrow and it's done, but we're still thinking we can do something with this property?
well, as far as the mitigation and the hazard mitigation, I mean, I agree with the mayor, I believe as far as the money has already been voted on by the previous commission in August. So I don't see anything that goes back to the full commission. budget look at it. But we don't, yes, obviously on the one property, I think we're all pretty good with Mayor calling tomorrow and finishing that out. I don't necessarily have a question, a comprehensive answer to your question. The mayor feels it's in his purview to do it, and I don't really have a rebuttal to it on. I mean, I'm not disputing that fact.
Right.
And basically, based on my understanding of,
Yeah, and my goal is to work with you. It has been, when I put the stop work order in, and that was to go to work with you. And we're reaching the end of that road. And it's not my decision into that road, it's team. And so we have to come to a resolve on it.
correct, which is,
So,
Commissioner, can you turn around?
I'm in the same boat as Carol.
God.
Well.
Sorry.
I could care less about what I've heard, the discussion on the different things we can do. But the question, I think there's a basic question here that I would be concerned with about the future, anything else, and that has to do with the commission's authority. If the commission approves something, can the commission rescind something? And that's, to me, if we were the authority to approve, who rescinds?
Would be the commission.
And I'm talking about that for anything in the future. Can we not rescind actions?
we'd already entered into a contract. Now, that'd be a legal question, but we'd already contracted with FEMA and done the work, started the process. So I don't think so, but again, that's for legal.
I would agree with you on the property that's already been executed. I would disagree on the one that has not. I would say that the authority would be to rescind that action should we want to. That's kind of what the decision is right here, because nothing happened, no money spent other than what the county was going to be out anyway for acquiring that property. Again, always out.
And the only reason I bring that up is that I've seen over the 30 years many times that we vote to do something, and we have, after the fact, information come to light. And if that's the case, it could be any number of issues that we deal with. I don't want to see our hands tied, or for us to be in such a position as to never be able to rescind anything after we pass it. And that's just a basic right, I think.
Well, I agree, and that's why I think it's kind of a split issue. On the general property, it's already been done. I mean, technically, you can't undo tearing down those buildings, and the money's already spent, but we can at least recoup the money from FEMA on that. So there would be nothing to rescind. I guess it wouldn't be prudent to rescind that, in my opinion, but the old post office property is one that we could rescind. I mean, look at the Comer Barn. We rescinded and repealed that and gave it back.
Well, Jeremy, no matter what the penalty would be by FEMA or anyone else to say we can't rescind action. Now, they may burn us as a result of it, but I think this commission has the authority to rescind anything that it has adopted.
Totally agree.
And that's not a wise thing to do in this case, but I'm saying I think that is the authority of the commission.
And it very well may be. I think we enter the contract, there's a difference, but that's why I say I think that's a legal question that we need clarification, because this in the Comer Barn is a little bit different. We never really entered it into a contract, so.
Well, I'm really glad for that. I really would have rescinded that and taken the chances.
Well,
Do we have a motion and a second on the floor?
well, not for this new one, as far as the post office, so, I mean, you can make a motion.
I'd like to, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer it for 30 days, to do more research.
Would you like to say defer to next month?
That'd be fine, sir.
All right. Second by Commissioner Schoaf. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Move on. So, item B in the old business is one that Commissioner Schoaf brought for us about the Army International Guard resolution. Do you want to speak to that, Commissioner Schoaf?
Yes, and I'll make a motion to, make a motion to discuss.
Second that motion.
All right. So this one was one we discussed last time. At the end of the day, some of this is moot, honestly, because the federal government has wisely retracted its law, doesn't mandate policies relevant to the armed forces. But I still think we should push this forward as a region is wherever and whenever possible, assert state, to encourage the state to assert autonomy where and when it can. I think it's an important thing. I note and appreciate the state looking at at least looking at ways to do that on the education front. And I think there's an opportunity to further encourage them to do that on the National Guard front. So I think it's still relevant. I would definitely do so.
Sure, Clint.
I agree with you, and because I believe that the trickle down from doing it from the military standpoint may have an effect on others. I have a son-in-law who's an immigrant from Turkey, and he was informed in the mail 2 weeks ago that he had to get a vaccination or they were going to deport him. Had to do it by May 1st. And I think that's wrong. If he wanted to have a religious exemption, it's going to cost $1,000 unrefundable. And I think if we make a stand on this, Mr. Chairman, I think it may trickle down to other divisions of our federal government.
My take on it, I agree with Clint, wherever and whenever we can encourage our state to assert lawful autonomy in accordance with the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution. I think we should. So I'll move to approve this.
Second. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, new business, A, Veteran Service Report should be attached, it's just for information only. Item B is 2023 Property Taxpayers Protection Act. This is something that County Mayor Joe Carr has kind of, in their Rutherford County Commission has drawn up. And I was excited about this when he came and spoke to a group in January and asked us to do this. For a little background, 2006 County Powers Relief Act, obviously we've been bemoaning this for years. Before Commissioner Klein became a commissioner, he was talking to me about this back in 2018 when I first got elected. And, what happened in 2006 basically is the democratically controlled state legislature passed a law that tied the hands of the county legislative bodies to be able to pay for their growth or have a way to pay for services that are a byproduct of growth, such as primarily schools, but also whether it's emergency services, roads, courthouse costs with increased crime that comes with growth. And so, ironically enough, the Tennessee Home Builders Association is the one who lobbied the state, to bind the hands of the county commission, keep county commissions from doing it. So what this resolution is asking is one to either, I wish that the state would repeal this, so I added that language to this, but I think there's a movement to amend that act so that it provides parity with the counties, with the cities, because right now the cities are the only entity in the state that can do any kind of meaningful, for lack of a better word, impact fee, so that development pays for the impact that it causes in the area that it is. And that just doesn't happen in the counties, and that's why I've voted down every single rezoning development that's come before me, because I'm not going to vote for anything that's called a property tax increase. And it's a simple fact. Development in Sumner County, it causes the taxes to increase, and what that is just a public risk with private benefit. And homeowners should not, or developers and politicians, they're socializing all the costs when the homeowners are burdened. They're having to pay for other people's profits and benefits they don't benefit from. I mean, that's really socialization, what it is. And even County Mayor Carr mentioned that the current model of this impact fee restriction is socialism. I mean, you're paying for somebody else's growth and you're confiscating somebody's tax dollars against their will to do something they don't want you to do with it. And then they're diametrically opposed to it. So I'm excited about this, that it will basically provide, equal standards with cities and counties that have parity to pay for that growth. So like Commissioner Mo Taylor always mentioned, he picked on Gallatin, but Gallatin is definitely killing us for their growth, over 11,000 residential units approved, and that's easily probably 5 to 6 more schools. And we don't have money to pay for them without raising property taxes. And that's for growth that we don't control. So what this does is puts the county on the even playing field with the cities to allow the county then, if this is repealed or amended in the state legislature, to be able to come up with a plan that how we're going to pay for services that the county, that the cities are encumbering us to have to pay for, is to make sure the cities are basically, any kind of growth that they bring forward, that those causing those growth decisions are going to have to pay for those growth decisions, as in it's obviously going to be developers and homeowners, for those things, or cities themselves. I don't have any misnomers. So that's a little bit in a nutshell what this act is doing, is just to open up and even the playing field and provide that parity with the cities to give the county an ability to pay for the services that their citizens are incurring against their wishes for the most part. So.
And just to be clear, you're saying, I read it, this is a resolution expressing our support.
This is a resolution encouraging, and to be sent to all the delegates, Sumner County and state, encouraging them to... Seconded by Commissioner Klein. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Carries. Next item is the resolution for our private act we had in there. After speaking with the state legislators, one thing that I left in this is a bill. Originally, I wrote this as a public act with Carolyn Weaver, and worked with state attorneys on this when this was originally presented. So when I presented it to the commission, I left the municipalities in there because they were a part of the public act. The state attorneys have said basically, if you want to keep that in there, that we would have to push for a public act. Couldn't do a private act. And so my drugs at this point, I'd rather do a private act, and so we removed all the municipalities from it for this time. But I will be encouraging the cities to pass ordinances mirroring this for themselves, basically with the same prohibitions to protect citizens, because the number one thing is that these cities gobble up county land and are able to do this against county residents' wishes because they can annex or do things. That's not helpful. So I would hope that cities like Hendersonville and White House and Portland and Gallatin, et cetera, would adopt ordinances that I'm going to be working with their county council, the city councilman for doing. But this basically is just repassing this in order to, there's a caption bill for both a public act and a private act for us being held right now in the state legislature that Representative Lambert has done for us. But I told him that we would just pull this back to the commission, make it clean, remove the municipalities, and make it easier, and send this back to them, just for the county-only type of entities. So, second. All right, got a motion, we got a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. The final item, not final item, but on new business is, since the time thing for monthly meeting, I would like to move that we just permanently move this meeting to 5:30. So we'll just, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that motion, this meeting time will move forward permanently to 5:30 p.m. That'll give us time. Last item on the agenda is commission recognition. Got a motion to group and approve. I'll give a second.
I think there's a gift in mine.
No, I got pulled off. You should have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were up in the meeting. Yeah, I was. Commission recognition, we got a motion, and I got a second for group and approve. However, any discussion, Commissioner Ryder?
Please. By all means, I'm all for recognizing people that do well. But my goodness, as I look at this, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 commission recognitions, which is great. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 of these 8 are schools. So, I guess I would like to send these to the school board, or encourage persons filing these to send these to school board. One is for having respect for those who deserve this. I think the school board would be the appropriate place, and then keep countywide events, countywide recognitions here. So I guess I would,
I'll amend my motion to approve.
Sorry. I wanted to speak to.
you agree with me again?
I do not agree.
Sure will,
This is something that has traditionally, as long as I can remember, even before I was on the county commission, has been reserved for commissioners to recognize people. And it's a good thing, a PR thing, and it's something worthy to do as commissioners. And it has never been questioned, except Darrell. I've never been questioned about doing this from anyone. If the person that I ever disliked presented something, that's fine. They're recognizing someone. What does it hurt? It compliments them. It makes them feel a bit of a success and achievement. And these students, one of these is mine, incidentally.
Appreciate that transparency.
The Hendersonville High School cheerleaders. Now, I don't know who did the Liberty Creek, but I could care less. These kids are our kids. We are county commissioners. These are our children. We fund the schools, and we should be able to recognize them. Let's leave this alone. And let's allow commissioners to recognize quality things.
I will have to correct you on one thing about, there's only...
Well, I probably won't agree to it.
There was a similar gesture made by a previous term by the previous county mayor. I don't think I ever agreed with him on anything except for this one thing. But it was the point of Commissioner Rogers' spirit of like, I don't ever see the school board recognizing school-related events where we as a county commission are recognizing citizens that are non-school related as county commissioners, because we're not school board members, we're county commissioners. So I did agree with the previous county mayor on that aspect. It just logically made sense to me.
Well, I'm sorry that the school board is short-sighted. But I don't want it. If these kids achieve, I want them to be recognized.
So nothing about this prohibiting school board.
No.
All right, well, most of the, I was gonna make it, but I don't.
No.
So we had a group of approves on the motion on the table, we're discussing. But there was, was there going to be any other motions for that? The legislative committee has been duly
Thank you over here, you do have a
Just observation, is there any way, I mean, this is, if they all show up, this is gonna be like 150, 200 people. Can we spread it out over the course of a couple months?
No, we gotta have them all.
I hope they all show up. It's a lot, but one of them, I mean, really, once they have achieved, needs to be recognized.
I'm just surprised that we don't have magnet schools not on this list. We are.
Well, I couldn't find anything.
So,
I'll second it if you need to add anything.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second to group and approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we have one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
So, second by second.